Hi, I'm Pat Halpin, and welcome to this special edition of Meet the Leaders, coming to you from our state's capital, Albany, New York. We've been joined by New York State Assemblyman Michael Montesano. And Assemblyman Montesano, every year we get together when the session begins, and there's some new issues, but now there are some new faces, and in fact there are a bunch of new Democratic faces in the state Senate, 38 of them who are now in the majority. And that will change the dynamic, won't it?
Yes, it will. Certainly will.
Give me your thoughts about that.
Well, I have some concerns because when I first came here in 2008, we had a Democratic Senate, and it was just utter chaos and confusion.
It didn't work out.
No, they couldn't get along with each other.
Was it good for them? It wasn't good for the state.
That's correct. We had a budget that was late until August at that time. So it was a problem. And I have similar concerns this year. The same issues are rising again. And I have some concerns about the governor's position this year.
Well, now the governor, especially this governor, takes pride in getting budgets done on time, and he cajoles, he flatters, and sometimes he threatens to make it happen. Why would that change this year?
I don't see it changing this year. In fact, he took an extraordinary step the other day, and he threatened the legislature with the fact that there would be no budget unless he got the Women's Reproductive Health Act passed.
That's codifying Roe v. Wade decision,
well,
isn't it?
So he says it does, but actually it goes more to that. It adds late-term abortion policies into the bill. It decriminalizes abortion procedures that violate the law. So it goes many steps further than just codifying Roe versus Wade. But to be quite frank with you, I think if we would have passed that type of legislation, it should be done by a constitutional referendum and let the voters tell us what they want.
But given the Democratic majorities, I mean, they ought to pass that.
Well, this is what's interesting.
So why is it necessary to threaten the legislature?
Well, I just think,
why is the governor, making, especially with what's going on in Washington, people have had their fill of threats back and forth.
I just think he's posturing to show that he's accomplishing something. But I think what's going to be interesting too, Pat, is before the Assembly members on the Democratic side passed a lot of bills with the confidence that the Senate would obstruct it.
Well, and one comes to mind. Single payer.
That's correct.
California tried to do it. They said it would bankrupt the state. Even little Vermont said, we're going to do single payer. They looked at it and said, you can't do this on the state level.
And the governor has now backpedaled also on his position and takes the same position. He says it should be a federal piece of legislation because no state itself could fund such a program.
But there are a lot of state senators who are newly elected who ran on the platform of we're going to have Medicare for all in New York State, single payer.
Right. Well, they may pass the bill, but I don't believe he'll sign it. I think he's going to be in a position where he's going to have to veto the bill because he's already stated a negative position on it. He's done an analysis and he feels that would bankrupt us and it wouldn't be practical. It should be done on a federal level.
Well, and even Jerry Brown, who just retired as governor of California, said we can't do this on a state level.
That's correct.
So that's there's certainly ample support for people who are in the know to
and this has been our position on the Republican conference for the last several years, so telling them with the cost factor that they couldn't afford to do this.
So, but there are other proposals that have been stymied in the Senate. For example, congestion pricing. The Assembly passed congestion pricing to finance the MTA. Billions and billions of dollars are needed for capital. And the Senate didn't pass that. Do you see that passing this year?
Yes.
What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I'm a little concerned. I understand the need for it, and there is a justification for it to a certain aspect in the city, but they have this going all the way up to 95th Street. So it's just not, the downtown Manhattan or the Midtown section. So I think we need to consolidate it a little bit to the areas that are affected. And I think they have to reduce the amount of money they're looking to raise, and they're going to have to spread it across the board. You just can't target, taxis and Ubers and trucks. If you're going to do it, then it has to be even across the board and everybody has to contribute.
That's interesting. What about this law that passed the Assembly, which has to do with victims of sexual abuse? Passed the Assembly, didn't pass the Senate. It's one that was opposed by the Catholic Church, for example.
And again, my issue with that has always been is the look-back period, the retroactive period, which I can't agree to because it has far-reaching ramifications. Many of the people that would be involved in this are deceased. They can't defend themselves. And there may be no records that are available or evidence, tangible evidence that's available.
Now you're a lawyer. You're speaking as a lawyer and a former law enforcement.
That's correct. And also the governor has now taken a position that we have to rethink this bill for the same reasons, because he's acknowledged that not only the Catholic Church, but a lot of other religious institutions provide a lot of social services to the benefit of New Yorkers that the state cannot replace if financially these churches and religious organizations cannot carry out their mission. So we shouldn't do anything that would cause them irreparable financial harm. So I think he recognizes that retroactive period is a problem also.
What about decriminalizing marijuana? You're in law enforcement.
Right.
You know that there's an underground economy out there.
Right.
I don't smoke marijuana. I don't do those kinds of drugs, but I'm told by people who do that it's pretty accessible one way or the other illegally. What are your thoughts about decriminalizing it, expunging records? How should it be regulated if and when it becomes legal?
Well, first I'll go on record that I'm opposed to the legalization of recreational marijuana for a number of reasons. To begin with, the medical organizations have approached us and told us the detriment that this would be to our society. The people that run the rehab centers have told us the same thing. But more interesting, Pat, it's a controlled substance under the federal drug guidelines. So even if we pass such a law, it doesn't stop the FBI from coming in and arresting someone for possession and use of marijuana. Right. People don't get that, and it's all about tax money. In fact, the ones that are proposing this have already spent the tax money 3 times already, in anticipation of this. I don't think it's good. And also, since they're going to be taxing it substantially, it's still going to drive people to the underground market, because they're not going to be able to want to pay the price in a retail store that they're paying for.
It's kind of like sports gambling. If
Right.
if you've got a serious sports book,
Right.
you're not paying taxes on it.
That's right.
You're dealing with a local book.
And the same thing with cigarettes. We tax them so much, so they go out of state and buy them and bring them back home. So they will always find the the path of least resistance. But I don't think it's a smart move for our society to do this. We're going to have an increase in impaired driving, other types of industrial accidents that could take place. There's no way to test these things on the scene. And the neurologists have come in and other medical experts have come in and told us that the human brain is not fully developed till age 25. So if we have young people using these substances, it can interfere in their brain development, and issues of that nature.
Okay. A lot to talk about, and even more to do.
Right. It's going to be an interesting year.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks
Happy
for having
New
me
Year.
again.
Thank
Take
you
care.
so much.
Bye-bye.
That's going to do it for this edition of Meet the Leaders. I'm Pat Halpin. We'll see you again.